Hey, good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Huddle. It's Wednesday, halfway through the week. Where are we going to start today? You probably saw.
This is the first week I can honestly say this is not halfway. I mean, I feel like this is in my mind is Friday.
I thought you were going to say it feels like Monday. I was like, what planet are you on?
Oh no,
Sean's run a marathon partying the last few days.
This is my people's week, folks.
Yeah, exactly.
Give us very quickly. Give us the highlights from last night's party circuit.
The party circuit was just the White House. It was just funny watching the Taoiseach, Michael Martin, was sitting there with, Trump did the weave when he was just supposed to accept some shamrocks. And the look on his face when he was just like, and so the ballroom is going to be amazing. I mean, he went through the list. And if you just stopped and looked at the Taoiseach's face, it was like, how long is this? I mean, like you could tell it was not what he had was fully ready for. So that to me was the highlight of the night.
Just go with it, right?
I will just say, as a Democrat, this is the difference between having the White House and not. I was home last night cooking dinner for our 4 children, and Sean, I won't say names, is texting us photos of political celebrities, hugging them, smiling, and I'm knee deep in breaded chicken. This is what happens.
You know what? For 4 years, I never got the only note I got from the Biden administration was to inform me that they wanted to kick me off the board of the Naval Academy. That was my only invite from them.
Oh, that's nasty.
To the victor goes the spoils.
Yeah. Sure. You know what? Maybe your kids will go to a St. Patrick's Day party, Dan.
Well, more importantly, hopefully he has showed up armed with a bunch of intel and gossip for the Huddle. We will get to that. Speaking of, many of you have probably already heard, but just as we were signing off yesterday, the Trump administration experienced the first of its big major public defections on Iran. You had Joe Kent, who's the director of the National Counterintelligence Center, resigned over Iran specifically. And not only that, he took personal shots at the president, saying what was going on was counter to, quote, America first, that there was no imminent threat to push us into action, that the president had been, lied to by Israeli officials and other pro-Israel forces here in the United States. And we, here on the Huddle, we actually have a little bit of a debate about how big of a deal is this? Like, will it matter? So that's something we're going to talk about today. I'm excited about that conversation. We'll also discuss this push for total regime change by Israel, and not only Israel, other Gulf states as well, who are saying, just take them all out. And Israel, of course, picking off these leaders one by one. We'll talk about J.B. Pritzker's very good night last night, and also AIPAC's not so great night last night, and excited to hear Dan's take on all his takeaways from what we can glean in terms of the Democratic factions from last night's primaries in Illinois. And we'll also talk about the latest with DHS funding, some paper being traded across Pennsylvania Avenue. Will it actually reopen the government? Don't count on it, but we'll see. Okay, first we're going to talk about some fast growing trees. Dan.
Yeah, look, I said this the other day. I actually, it's a little secret. When we lived in DC, I loved to garden. My mother did. Like, if you haven't done it, there's nothing better. It requires patience. Coming home or going out in the morning, seeing colorful flowers or trees to watch things grow and kind of come together. And now that we live in New York City, when fast growing trees approach us, I've ordered indoor stuff, and my wife is all excited as well. Fastgrowingtrees.com. You go. If you haven't been on, they have a huge menu of options, from trees to shrubs to plants to perennials, indoor, outdoor. They guarantee that the plants will arrive alive. There's nothing worse than if you go to like a Home Depot or something, the plants are dead. You get home, you're like, my gosh, I got to go back. What a waste of money. And they will give you a 60-day guarantee on your order. And if there's a problem, they will provide a one-time replacement. So go to fastgrowingtrees.com, use our code HUDDLE, and order away. Spring planting season is coming up, but I'm telling you, there's really nothing better than gardening. It honestly is like good for the soul.
It's not even good. The way I read that website, you just plant it and go. That's my kind of gardening.
That's right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Set it and forget it.
I would love to garden, man. I just, the time,
It's great.
man, finding the time to just, I don't know. It's
an
30
ROI
minutes,
thing for
man.
me. Like I'm like, so if I
It
put
is.
the plant in, like in 5 months, I get 3 strawberries. Like, I don't know.
That's right.
There's
You want to see
nothing
the
better
result.
when the flowers are blooming. I'm serious.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
the best. Yep.
Except if for me, you plant something and nothing blooms. So that's always a problem. We'll see if fast growing trees can make a gardener of me yet. Let's look at the day book very quickly. Okay, 10 a.m. Senator Mark Wayne Mullen is going to be doing his first confirmation hearing. This is before Senate Homeland Security and Government Affairs Committee. Senate Republican leaders are going to be putting his nomination, it sounds like, on the floor by the end of next week. So that actually looks like it is on the fast track to move. 10 a.m., probably the most watched event here in Washington today, the Senate Intel's Worldwide Threats hearing. Tulsi Gabbard, the head of national intelligence, she's going to be taking center stage here. Why does that matter? Joe Kent, this figure who resigned, who we'll talk about here in a few minutes, was one of her top aides, a very close aide. So what she says today is going to be very much under a microscope.
Well, don't forget, there are going to be questions about what she was doing at the Georgia election raids, too. Like, there's a lot of questions. It's
going to be an interesting hearing. And by the way, fun fact. So at this same hearing last year, Tulsi Gabbard said that the Intelligence Committee had assessed that Iran was not building a nuclear weapon. Remember that? And then a few months later, the June Iran bombings happened, and here we are a year later from that. So, okay, also testifying at that hearing, Kash Patel, the FBI director, and John Ratcliffe, CIA director. At 2:30, the Federal Reserve Open Markets Committee announces interest rate decisions. We expect them to hold steady.
Yeah, in fact, we can pull this up quickly. Poly markets, if you haven't gone on it, most people believe here, almost 100% of poly market participants believe there will not be a change. I think the big question is, what do they say about how they see the war impacting the economy? Is it more likely to cut interest rates because the economy is slowing, or are they more worried about inflation rapidly accelerating, in which case they would have to put on the table the possibility of raising rates? I am sure we will hear from Donald Trump at some point.
Well, the interesting thing is, at least from some of the analysis that I read, the next, what do you call it? The sort of the fog of war, if you will, is what's causing a problem, because
totally
there's concern that they don't know, they're not entirely sure.
Yeah, how to predict this.
How to predict it. Yeah.
Yep.
5:30 p.m. today, the Attorney General is going to be up on the Hill with the Deputy Attorney General, Pam Bondi, and Todd Blanche, talking to the House Oversight Committee about Jeffrey Epstein. So we'll be tracking that. And then otherwise, J.D. Vance is headed to Michigan. The vice president expected to sort of talk about the economy, pivot back to the economy. Although I'll say, good luck with that. If reporters are asking him questions, the number one question for him today is going to be about his meeting with, again, this Joe Kent figure who resigned, who apparently met with him with Tulsi Gabbard before he put out that
and also
letter.
Don't forget, just down the road from where he's going to be is where that shooting happened less than a week ago. J.D. Vance has struggled on this question of Israel and the Middle East. Does he address that as well? It's been a little bit of a tough issue for him.
Yeah. Okay, quick second ad before we keep moving on. Question for you guys, all of you guys who have little kids. It is sixth season. We're luckily coming to the end of sixth season, but I don't know about you. I had multiple times in the past few months where my daughter came home sick. She was sick for a few days. I knew she needed some sort of medication to sort of get over this hump and get back to school and get well again. But I have to call the doctor, make an appointment, try to get her in at the last minute, drive there. She gets, a prescription, got to go to the pharmacy, try to figure out like how to take care of my little kid while going to the pharmacy and picking up medicine, but not wanting her to other people to be exposed to her. Well, there is a simple solution for this. And by the way, a lot of parents have this issue. All Family Pharmacy, super easy. All you have to do is go online, request the medication, talk to them about what is going on. They have a licensed physician who can get you the prescription and fill the prescription, send it directly to your door. So you don't have to do all of that running around, all in one simple solution. All you have to do is go to allfamilypharmacy.com and again, tell them what's going on, and they make it fast and easy, and you don't have to worry about running around town over and over again. So again, allfamilypharmacy.com/huddle. If you use the code HUDDLE10, you will get 10% off your first order. I'm really excited to try this out again because like trying to figure out how to get little kids medicine is like, it's very difficult sometimes.
I don't want to have to worry about the hours of the pharmacy. And I mean, like, so
well, it gives you time to garden. Yeah, you can garden now. You're freeing up time on the calendar.
There you go. Awesome. Thanks to All Family Pharmacy. All right, let's jump right in, guys. The conversation here. So Israel and the Gulf states pushing for regime change. There are a pair of stories in the Wall Street Journal from overnight and this morning that there's a lot of people pushing for regime change. Maybe not here in the U.S., but over in the Middle East. So Israel, quote, is hunting down Iran regime members in their hideouts one by one. The story goes into how they're doing it, some tips they have picked up from actually Iranians to go after some of these people. I mean, like they've killed so many people, I can't even keep track. I feel like there was like a number of them in the past 24 hours. And then there's this other story in the Wall Street Journal. Gulf states want the U.S. to cripple Iran's regime before ending the war. The UAE and others viewing Iran's theocracy as this sort of existential threat. UAE obviously has been hit by 2,000 strikes from Iran since this all started, 80% of them aimed at civilian infrastructure. So they're pissed, in a word. The question, though, is how does this impact what the president is going to do here? I mean, Sean, obviously, you've said it before. Ashley said it last week. He's going to do what's best for the American people. But there are a lot of allies in the Middle East who are in his ear right now who say, just finish the job here. Just keep going. Get these guys out.
I agree. And I think that's where we end up. It's like, you want to make sure that you decimate them so that it doesn't grow back. I mean, this is like killing, cancer or anything else. You got to take it out entirely or metastasize it. So I think if I had to guess where the majority of his advisors are, it's take it all out. Don't stop and have to refight this battle in a year or two.
So if that's the case, if that's the case, very quickly, Sean, then is it just not to say like the phrase regime change, obviously like people are allergic to it in this country, right? So is it just to sort of keep going and keep fighting and then what happens, even though maybe that's where we end up? They just don't want to project it right now and say this is regime change? Because they're not saying that right now anymore, at least.
I think part of it is that it's a really interesting question because it's like it's nuanced. I know this, like a lot of people say that will take issue with that, but like I don't think the ultimate goal, right? So when you go in somewhere, is that one of your stated goals, regime change? I don't get the sense that was at the beginning. I think it's evolving to say we can't achieve our strategic objectives without regime change now. Whereas with Maduro, it was we don't necessarily need to go out and get, Machado in because we believe that we can work with Rodriguez. It's a nuance, but it's important. I think they're coming to the conclusion that there's no one in the current leadership in that line of succession that is going to want to work with the U.S. And I think that was an open question going into this. Will somebody recognize that it makes more sense to work with the United States than not? So I think while we might not have gone in fully with the intent of regime change, I think we're getting there. And frankly, I do think it makes a ton of sense. I would think that it's not, when you've got not just Israel, which no surprise, of course, Israel wants, and that's almost like a given. But the idea that the Gulf states are like, hey, if we're in, let's make sure we do this right, says a lot. And I think that's where we're going to end up.
Dan, this is kind of more of a foreign policy niche question. So feel free to like totally skip over it if you're not sure. But like, why the Arab states, they want us to do this. Why are they not doing more? I mean, there was some talk at one point about, wasn't there talk at one point about them getting involved and doing strikes of their own? Why lean on us, the U.S., to sort of take care of, their dirty work here? Why not do more to help us in the region?
Well, I think one, they don't have the capability. They simply don't. I mean, most of their arms are our arms. And I think there is a risk of their soldiers going in that they are on Iran's doorstep. And so, it's harder to retaliate against the United States. But they are helpful financially. They have been kind of, relatively speaking, good partners to the Trump administration. I think the interesting thing here is, look, we've talked about all the problems here, but it does sound like the Israelis are beginning to get in, and it's mostly the Israelis, into the heads of the Iranian regime, because these stories that they have so penetrated the Iranian regime with spies. They literally know when these people are moving and meeting under a tree or a park bench, and they kill them within minutes of these people coming out of hiding. And at some point, you become totally paranoid. Like, I can't go to the bathroom without getting killed. Therefore, it's time. Like, the question is, as Sean said, I think everyone now agrees regime change is coming. The question is, would you trust them if they come to the table and say, hey, let's talk about transferring the nuclear material out. Let's talk about a peaceful coexistence. Because I think the Israelis and the neighbors would say, you have to just take them out. Like, you cannot trust any of these people. You have to replace them, the entire, regime. So we do need to acknowledge where there is good happening and where there may be developments coming that would, ensure victory.
I have a sense.
Rachel, can I just one quick point on what Dan said? That was part of the next, and the unknown is when you go in and you start seeing everyone getting killed. Like, you go, I don't want to be next because I'm going to get killed. That does something to your psyche where you go, maybe we should work with these guys. And anybody who says, well, you shouldn't, like, that's impossible to tell me that if you know that the next person on the list, you're the next person in succession or one of the top people, you're going to get killed. You can't tell me that from a intel analysis that it's reasonable to guess that they might be willing to work with you. And so I think we just got to go down the line and just start literally going boom, 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 boom. Let's see who raises their hand and say, don't come after me. I'm willing to work with you.
Well, but here's the other part of this, which is there is a really in-depth story this morning about the debate in the White House about what to do about this nuclear material. Like, I didn't know this, so I read the story. We have teams that are a nuclear strike team that has been planning for years to potentially go into Iran to get out the nuclear material. Do you blow it up in the mountain? Do you actually try to physically take the canisters out? And it said that Trump is, kind of not struggling, but is debating. Like, they are, do we do this? Do we really go? Sean, I think it goes to the regime change issue, which is if you can get the regime to break, it's a lot easier to go in if you're kind of welcomed or you're not opposed, as opposed to this current state, which is the regime is on the run, but they're still there. And sitting in the mountains is the nuclear material.
Yeah. And meanwhile, by the way, still none of our allies have raised their hands to say they're ready to help with the strait. We were texting about this a little last night. The Japanese prime minister, who's going to be coming to the White House here pretty soon, is apparently a little worried about this meeting. And she probably should be. If anybody can publicly embarrass and pressure somebody, it's the president of the United States. Just bring in all the cameras for their little discussion. She says it's going to be a, quote, extremely difficult meeting, but that she also says it's going to be extremely difficult for Japan to do anything with the Strait of Hormuz. So we'll keep tracking that. Let's move.
Wait, if I were her, I would insist that JD Vance not be in that meeting.
Stay in Michigan.
I'd be like, is JD coming? Because I saw the Zelensky one, and I'm not sure I want that.
Yeah, no kidding.
We'll talk about that tomorrow. I've got questions for you guys on that one, but yeah, okay.
Put a pin in it. Okay, perfect. Let's move on to the sort of palace intrigue here of this story here in Washington. That, again, is this Joe Kent figure who resigned very publicly. In his resignation letter, he writes that high-ranking Israeli officials, influential members of the American media deployed a misinformation campaign that wholly undermined your American First platform and sowed pro-war sentiments. This was a lie, basically saying this echo chamber deceived the president. So let's just start with the fact that the White House has very much downplayed this. I know, Sean, you talked to a lot of these folks yesterday, so I want to hear what you're hearing. But they've clearly downplayed this, but they're taking it seriously enough that they are hitting back, right? Caroline Levitt was on her game yesterday, pushing back, tweeting on it. Laura Loomer was going after this guy's wife. They called this guy a leaker. Taylor Budowich, who is a deputy, he was a deputy chief of staff in the White House, is now in the private sector, but he was sort of pulled in and involved, called this guy a loser. So like they are taking it seriously enough
course
that
they are.
need to push back. What are you hearing from people, Sean, when you're out?
So let's just give a timeline. When this was breaking right as we came off air yesterday.
Right as we came off air yesterday.
And I'll be honest, initially my reaction was, okay, this is going to give some oxygen probably to Tucker Carlson, Megyn Kelly's,
right.
Wave some Dems to wave around. Throughout the day, from when we got off air to the time I left the White House last night, to a T, to a person, not one person said a positive thing about Joe Kent. Not one. It was like, and it wasn't like reading talking points, your standard, like, hey, I see we're all supposed to say he's a loser. It was, go look at some of the things that he has said in the past. And it's funny because, again, this is another example of the media talking about he's a conspiracy theory until he says something that they like, and then he's suddenly the greatest guy in the world. He is this term's Miles Taylor. This is a guy who I think the president was kind enough to endorse him when he ran for Congress, did all this stuff, and took advantage of it. I'm telling you, every single person I talked about, no one had a kind word to say about him at all. And I was somewhat shocked by that a little, just because I don't know him. He had been on my show when he was running for Congress. I didn't know enough about him to judge him, but like he had been pulled out of the DNI's office because of concerns. I don't know if those are true or not. All I'm saying is there's actually a track record of people crapping on this guy for the last 12 months.
But put that aside, how are people worried?
Not a person,
nobody was worried that he would stir the pot on this,
because their whole view was like, this guy is disgruntled. He is not part, like he feels like he got passed over for a bunch of stuff. I'm just telling you, if there is not a person, you can argue that they should be or they shouldn't be. What I'm telling you is,
for sure, but they were not.
People that I talked to the highest levels, not a person gave a crap.
I think it's smart on their part to not make this a big thing, because if they I feel like there was probably a span of 5 hours yesterday where Republicans were all going after this guy. And I actually felt like it made it a bigger story than it otherwise would have been. The question is it a day 2, day 3, day 4 story or not? One reason why I think, this could continue to be a problem for them beyond just yesterday is because, number one, this guy's resume. I mean, I know a lot of people don't like him. They say he was a leaker or whatever. But I mean, this guy deployed almost a dozen times overseas, serving in the military. He's a Gold Star husband. He lost his wife, who was serving in Syria when she was killed, I believe, in 2019. I mean, Tucker Carlson's going to give this guy a big megaphone today to tell his story, and he has a huge audience too. And then the last thing is, we've talked on the show about, yes, Republicans have come home to the president when it comes to supporting what's going on in Iran, but we've talked about some of those are kind of squishy, right? Like they're giving the president the benefit of the doubt. Like, does this give a green light to some people who are not sure, like they support what's going on to speak? Go ahead, Sean.
I think, but John, before you answer that, because I'd like you to address this in your answer.
Yeah, definitely.
To me, the bigger issue, because look, if you walked around, most people don't know who Joe Kent is.
For sure. No.
The bigger issue was when I saw Tulsi Gabbard's statement hours later, right? She was quiet. She's been relatively quiet this entire time, like the last couple weeks. And it was Donald Trump made the decision. Donald Trump, there was even J.D. Vance in his statements, like when he was standing behind the president, it was Donald Trump made the decision, and I firmly agree. Tulsi Gabbard never once says, and I fully agree with Donald Trump. And that to me, Sean, is if Tulsi went off the reservation, I think it would give, more oxygen.
Yes.
I think Joe Kent, this story dies by tomorrow. Look, if you already hate the war, Joe Kent is you're going to wave him around. If you're with Trump, I don't think it's enough to break it. But I'm watching Tulsi Gabbard.
For sure. Everyone is.
So let me say 3 things on this. Number one, it will be interesting what he says, because to the extent that the guy has anything, it's going to be classified. And so he is playing with fire on this. Yeah. Number 2, his statement reads that, and I actually fully agree with Tulsi's statement. At the end of the day, the job, I mean, this is what people got pissed at me all the time. Well, don't you believe that my job wasn't, the press secretary's job is to reflect the views and thoughts and policies of the principal, not themselves. And I joke with people all the time. The second the press secretary says, well, here's what I think, you get fired. That's not your job. The job of the DNI is to present, or the CIA director, or any of the other intel agencies, is to present the president with the best intel possible for him to make a decision, not for you to make a decision. And this, frankly, was the problem with Trump 1.0. And part of the reason I wrote Trump 2.0 is that too many people thought it was about them and their decisions and their agenda and not his. He was elected by the American people, not them. Joe Kent can have his disagreements with whether or not the threat was imminent or not. I believe, based on the fact, frankly, without any classified information, that when you chant death to America for years on end, that signifies at least a willingness that they want to hurt you. And when you kill, innocent and civilians and service members from America, maybe they're not your friend. So I think if his biggest issue is that Israel played an outsized role, then that's not that. I mean, I don't find anything he said in his statement compelling.
Can I want to ask you, though, your thoughts on, pardon me, Tulsi Gabbard, because, I was making calls on this yesterday, and I did very much get the sense that people in the administration are not happy with her. I know you said you agree with her statement, but some people felt like she should have fired this guy a long time ago, that they were clear to her that they wanted him to go, although some people close with her are disputing this. And they just don't understand how she was not able to get somebody she's close with, this close aide, not to try to embarrass the president when he resigned. He could have just resigned and gone away and not made this such a huge issue. Instead, he blew the whole thing up. And how could she not have stopped him? And then again, that statement, like Dan was saying, she was just like, okay, the president has the right to decide to go to war. The president has the right to decide what is an imminent threat. She did not endorse anything. And so people, I feel like people in the Trump
but Rachel, go back to this. I do think, and again, maybe some people in the White House disagree with me on this. If you start having the DNI have to personally tell you what they think of everything and everyone in the White House, that's a bad precedent to set.
Sure. But you're also supposed to be a team player.
Do you agree with this? Do you do this? That's not your job. And the second that we go down that path, you can't turn back.
No, I agree. I just feel like the president, I mean, I bet he's going to be watching some of this hearing today. He would expect you to be on the team. You got to be on the team if you're going to be in the anyway.
Let's just get through this phase by phase. The statement yesterday I thought was appropriate. Maybe she could have leaned in a little bit more. I don't know what was asked.
Yeah.
Today, Act 2, this is very different. Okay. We just joked about the Japanese prime minister watching the Zelensky movie. I know a lot of Tulsi's team. I have a feeling they watched the Gnome movie and they saw these folks are coming. The Dems are coming loaded for bear. And if I'm Tulsi, you got to understand that how Gnome, that one hearing is the straw that broke the camel's back for Christie, right? I will be very intrigued how she answers these questions today, because the statement was one thing. The testimony is going to be very different for her. It's seeing you on camera when your facial how you react and how forcefully you say things, your intonation, all that is going to matter.
Yeah. And just a reminder,
Vance standing behind Trump, he leaned into, wow, we have a smart president. The other ones were he played the part.
Yes.
And that's where I just think, okay, I'll give it to you, Sean. Act 2. Now you're on camera.
Yeah.
It's a production. You better play the part.
Yeah, she should take some notes from JD Vance on this for sure. And just a reminder, Democrats are definitely going to be pulling out some of her old tweets on this. She one time tweeted, stand with me against Trump's Iran war. This was from years ago, of course. No war with Iran. She's got T-shirts, from her 2020 presidential campaign saying that. So we all know where she is. Dan, I'm just curious, last thing here. How much are Democrats going to focus on this versus, Georgia election security?
It'll be mostly Iran because that's the topical.
So? Okay.
Well, look, I think here's the thing. What Kent said is what a lot of people believe, right? Which is Israel did lean into this. Israel has been, we've talked about this going back to when he visited last November. Netanyahu has been chomping at the bit to finish the job. So they will try to show that this was not America first, that this was more kind of Israel and America. And anytime Trump and the Republicans are having to address that, it's an uncomfortable situation. And that's what they'll do.
All right, let's move on to the DHS shutdown and Hakeem Jeffries raising a potential solution this morning. He and other Democrats are going to host a noon event launching a discharge petition to fund DHS operations, except ICE. We've talked about this. Totally understand, Sean, is absolutely unacceptable. And I frankly, I don't think this is probably going to go anywhere. But I should also note here that the White House has put forward a new offer to Democrats. Let's see. Here it is. Let me pull it up. Expanded use of body cams, which we talked on the show is probably going to happen. They won't deport U.S. citizens, which, by the way, is already the law. So that's not a big thing at all. Increased oversight, which the administration, again, was already going to use. But two other things that are interesting. They are now saying they would enforce visible officer IDs and require them to verbalize their name and agency when asked by civilians. And they would also limit civilian enforcement in sensitive places like hospitals and schools unless they need to go in for public safety or national security concerns. Those are concessions, Dan.
Yes, totally.
But Democrats, I think Schumer has already responded to this and said not good enough.
Yeah, I think two things. I think one, Democrats do feel a need to be seen as trying to solve this. Like, I think even the last few weeks, they didn't. They just thought, like, come to us, we have the advantage. I think with airport lines getting longer in the sense that if something happens domestically, there is a feeling of like, we need to be doing something. Even Elise Slotkin, I know she was laughed at after what happened in Michigan, was like, no, we need DHS to be funded. So I think, one, Jeffrey's idea, okay, ICE already has a budget, from the big, beautiful bill. So we'll offer to fund the rest of DHS. I don't think it'll pass, but it's, they're trying to do something. And then the fact that the White House, again, the politics of ICE remain on our side. I do think you are seeing movement and action in staff conversations. I think the end is closer, like we're closer to the end than the beginning now. Yeah. Maybe in a week or two.
Interesting. I don't know, man. I feel like this is a pretty good offer from the White House. And if they're rebuffing it, it's like, obviously it doesn't include masks. It doesn't include requirement for judicial warrants to go into certain places. But like, those are two things they're not going to get. I just don't think they're going to get them. On the other side, Sean, though, is there a risk for Republicans that if Democrats put up this discharge petition or try to move it because of the pressure, you start to see, squeamish or, frontline Republicans join? And then it looks like the Republican leadership is the one that's being obstinate here. If you have some Republicans going and joining Democrats.
So a few important points when people hear about this today. Number one, the discharge petition takes 218. It's not going to get there, right? So no Republicans.
You don't think any Republicans will join?
No, because it's a joke. It's not serious. And here's why. Number one, ICE is funded. Okay, so to move a bill that doesn't fund ICE, which is already funded, is got to be one of the dumbest things I've ever heard. The second issue is this. You don't get to pick and choose. If Democrats want to set this precedent, I'm all for it. Totally. God bless you guys, because we'll play the game at some point when you take the majority. If you get to decide what agencies within a department that you want to fund, I'm in. I'll play the game with you. Trust me when I tell you that this benefits us in the long run, not the Democrats. But you don't get to pick and choose in a department funding bill which parts you want to fund, okay? And if we did this to Democrats, they'd be raising holy hell. They would talk about you can't do this. You have 13 appropriations bills. They pass like that. Democrats have agreed to every one of them. And I'm just telling you, this is a horrible, like the idea that the media isn't doing the basic job of explaining how ridiculous this is just another sign of how complicit they are on peddling the Democrats' talking points.
Well, I would say this about what Sean, because Sean, you're 100% right. And here's the way to think about it. Every agency has departments and funding that it is unpopular, right? Think about the USAID, the condoms in Mozambique and stuff that just to the average person, they're like, what are they doing, right? You can argue why we needed to do that, but generally speaking, it's politically unpopular. If you start essentially being able to take these agencies apart and identify and let's say poll and focus group the most unpopular pieces, suddenly the whole thing falls apart. And so I do think, to Sean's point, this is a super dangerous precedent that we are setting, particularly because we tend to be the ones to advocate for funding that may not look the best, if just put out to the general electorate. And I know that's what you should, in a democracy, that's what you do. But like the reality is we probably will lose in the long run if we pursue this. I agree with you, Sean.
Yeah, I've said it before, I'll say it again. The appropriations process, thanks to the Dems this year, is going to never be the same again. Like, I feel like at some point the shoe's going to be on the other foot and all these things are going to come roaring back and Democrats are going to be like, oh, you can't hold government money hostage for a certain policy demand. And it's going to be like, BS, you did that.
You guys did it.
Like,
I mean, I think the whole thing
is dead.
I don't mean to sound insulting to like the Department of Interior or whatever, but like, if this is the idea that, like, I'm not kidding when I, like, maybe it's because of where I live. We all live in either, I mean, Dan's in New York, World Trade Center. We're here in Northern Virginia. I'm just appalled, literally appalled that 2 decades past 9/11, where there is no sense of like, oh yeah, it's Homeland Security. The entire department was created to ensure that we didn't get attacked again on the homeland. And these guys are holding up something literally like this isn't real. As I said, ICE is funded.
It's real. It's just the facts have changed. We're now
no. But what I'm saying is,
we were not.
ICE is funded. Okay, so you're not actually having a debate over the funding of ICE. That's why I'm saying it's not like, well, we don't want ICE to get more money or we want it to get less. They're literally holding up the entire safety of America and screwing with federal workers who they're supposedly on the side of because they want to for a political stunt.
By the way, since like Tom Homan helped, not completely take over the Minnesota thing, but yeah, take over the Minnesota thing. I feel like we hear a lot less about masks and judicial.
Wow, there's a war going on now. So I mean, it just the events have overtaken. I mean, again, this is why I say the facts have changed. We are now at war. There have been, at worst, you would say domestic or at best domestic incidents. At worst, they're outright terror attacks in the last 2 weeks. You got to fund DHS. Like
you know what, by the way, total side note, I mean, this is apropos of nothing, but in the Navy Yard section of DC, which is where the stadium is and everything, over the weekend, massive, like, I don't even know what you would call them. Like, they're not skirmishes, but it's not like full on, like, acts of violence going on. And it's the National Guard here coming to the aid, making sure everything's going. I mean, it's like no one's even acknowledging how the Trump policies are helping to keep cities like DC continue to be safe. The Memphis, New Orleans, like you don't hear any of the good. And I find it so funny how like, today's Minnesota's fallen into the backstop, but like these cities are safer because of these policies. And we sort of just let that go away as well.
Let's do a quick, thought about Cozy Earth. Sean, are you wearing your Cozy Earth this morning?
I did change. I was wearing my Cozy Earth pajamas, but I told you I ordered when I was traveling, mostly because Dan shamed me into not having my appropriate pajama seasonal wear. So I did. I ordered both over the weekend. I got both set of joggers. But today I'm going to tell you, I feel bad because I missed the window, but it's Reince Priebus's birthday. And I was thinking, what do you get a guy like Reince Priebus? And I thought, you know what? Cozy Earth. It's as I tell you guys, you can get anybody in your life Cozy Earth because there's something for everyone there. Everyone that I've given something from Cozy Earth, whether it was the towels, the sheets, the pajamas. What else did I give? Hands down, I get a note. Oh my goodness, that was the greatest thing ever. I'm so excited. You will not go wrong with Cozy Earth. So, Reince, either you're going to get something from Cozy Earth or my new book. I haven't decided which. But the cool thing is that if I go to Cozy Earth, I can use our code Huddle for 20% off. So that is my new go-to birthday gift for everyone. Go to CozyEarth.com, use code Huddle, and take care of everyone on your list.
Ryan's happy birthday. 39 is a really big year for you. Big supporter of our show, by the way. So I hope he's watching and hearing this. Okay, let's move on to Tuesday's primaries. JB Pritzker, big flex last night in the race to replace Senator Dick Durbin. His candidate, Juliana Stratton, she wins by seven points, I think it was. And this is despite all that crypto money that went back. It was poured into Raja Krishnamurthy's race and the CBC backing
Robin Kelly.
Robin Kelly, that's right. So Dan, how much of a boost does this give him going into 2021 and 2028? Obviously, you want to look like you can influence your party, especially your state party, but like, will this matter?
Sure. Look, nothing helps a cause like being seen as strong and winning. I mean, just go back to Gavin Newsom with the redistricting fight. Like when you win, it gets people excited. People want to be with the winner. Donald Trump understands that better than anyone else. A couple of things. One, we've talked about Kamala Harris with Black women. JB Pritzker now has a black, well, assuming she wins in the general, which he is heavily favored to do.
Yep.
He now has a black woman who is presumably going to be in his corner, and he can go down to South Carolina and other places with her and say, I am very supportive of the community. Interest groups like JB Pritzker, he's good with the unions, the environmentalists, the pro-choice community. So when you think about putting a coalition together, JB Pritzker now is starting to kind of show some flashes. And if AOC were to not run, and we haven't talked about this, but she has now made a couple trips recently to upstate New York to do some town halls with members of Congress up there. Not exactly something, if you're thinking of running for president, maybe if you're thinking of running for the Senate, that you would be doing. JB right now may be the most viable progressive candidate in the race. And I think their theory of the case is, as a Pritzker, whose family founded Hyatt Hotel, who is a multi-billionaire, that maybe he could do what Donald Trump has done, which is appeal to working class people, but not be threatening to the business community because of his family and his background. I don't know if JB is going to be able to do it. But right now, if Gavin Newsom won 2025, JB Pritzker's kind of winning 2026 as someone to keep an eye on, because he is positioning himself as maybe the progressive candidate.
That's a good quote there, Dan, if I had it right. Calling a column about this. One quick thing, though. CBC, you've mentioned this, super mad that he did not back Robin Kelly. Ultimately, you think they forgive him because he did support a member of the Black community?
Someone told me that they had to do that. They were asked to do it, and they put out a statement. But it was more, it was more bark than bite.
Gotcha.
And,
check the box. Sean, you were laughing when he was talking. What were you laughing at?
First of all, I look at JB Pritzker generally. Secondly, the media coverage this morning to me was fascinating. He's the sitting 2-term governor running for a 3rd term. And it was just like, he showed his might in contested primaries. He didn't like, yes, she won
in his own state. So
in his own state. And I'm like, yeah, no kidding. Like, I hope with that amount of money and being in office that long that like in a contested, multi-contested, this wasn't even just a one-on-one, like you win with a plurality. I found this like, I get Dan's point, and I don't, this is not a shot. It's like the idea, it sounds the whitest thing I've ever heard. I'm going to take my new Black female friend to South Carolina and turn around and be like, look, I've got one.
I didn't mean it quite.
No,
like
you didn't. I'm not making fun of it because you're right. No.
Let's not get in trouble on this show.
That's why I made that comment.
No, but Dan is correct.
But he is
this
right,
is so insane. Why I'm laughing is that the idea that like, this is a show and tell. Like suddenly, my bona fides with the Black community is that I helped elect one Black woman. It's like Pete Buttigieg now. He's suddenly carrying hot sauce, trying to do a Hillary Clinton, and like, oh, I carry hot sauce everywhere. That's how I'm ingratiating myself with the Black community. It's so phony. And I just,
but it's important to Democratic base, Sean. I mean, you might not.
I get it. That's why the identity politics of the left will never, I can never wrap my head around it.
I don't think Mike Pence was picked because he was, he was going to light up the world. That was a whistle to a community Trump needed in 2016.
Yeah. I'm not, but there's a different, I guess my point is that, yes, everybody, look, every VP helps strengthen something or a perceived weak or fill a perceived, I don't know. I just of all of the candidates, I look and I go, there's just nothing about JB Pritzker. I've seen his video. Like, there's nothing about him. If he didn't have money, family money, we would not be talking about him.
Well, that's a good segue to bring up. I think we have another poly market on this.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I mean, and by the way, he's pretty far down. Do we have that?
Way far down.
Way down. Okay. I mean, it'll be interesting to see if this chart moves after a good night, but like there is still the question of like, okay, yes, he can influence in his own state, but how much can he flex when it comes to sort of Democrats nationwide?
Wait a second. He is below James Tallarico, a state rep who is running for Senate in Texas.
Yeah.
Like
he needs the boost.
That is literally got to like when you wake up this morning and see that, like, I hope he uses some of his family money to go on Polymarket because this is embarrassing politically.
Well, but here's the thing, though. You have to think about coalitions. You have to think about how do you assemble your voters in certain states. And I will say this about JB Pritzker. He has been to New Hampshire. He has been starting to work the media a little bit, right? He went, I think, with Fox with Brett Baer. JB wants to do this. JB is doing the things he is, as I said, labor loves him, right? Which is not insignificant. Environmentalists love him. He has used his money to throw around to ingratiate himself. Like, Donald Trump did the same thing. Like, there's nothing wrong with this. I still think he is, a little bit of a long shot. But if you look at people who are doing the things that you need to do to be in a position to be strong, JB at his own money, it's not insignificant. He is slowly but surely having a good 2026.
Related note, but our last topic here. Let's move on to AIPAC because they did also not have a great night. I mean, it could have been worse, but they won 2 out of 4. Where they poured $21 million. But where they put most of their money, they lost. So the 9th District, Daniel Bliss, we talked about him yesterday, is a Jewish candidate, relative of Holocaust survivors. He won and beat Lauren Fine, who was their candidate that they had spent they had spent $1.4 million to try to block this and $4.4 million to try to help State Senator Fine. Didn't work. Dan, I mean, AIPAC, even their allies are like, what are they doing? What are they doing?
It's so fascinating because in a few races now, you have had what I would say are moderate candidates who net are supportive of Israel, but are now starting to say, hey, look, we need to condition some money. I'm not just going to blank check Israel, right? And AIPAC has made the decision that is unacceptable. You need to be 100% with us, no strings attached, strong ally shoulder to shoulder. And so they are going to war. They've gone to war with what I would say is kind of where the middle of the party is right now. I would even dare say it may be somewhat increasingly where the Republican Party is headed. And what you're doing is you're losing not just the wing of the party, the progressive base. You're now starting to lose the middle. And the problem is you're talking about a party that may control both chambers of Congress, could in 3 years control the entire town, and you've gone to war with them. Like, you're not going to win that in the long run.
Yeah.
And so I don't know what AIPAC is thinking they're going to achieve. And look, the more we talk about winning is strength, losing, then people now are going to seek revenge against them. So now it's not just they're not your friends. They now are becoming your enemies.
Right.
That's problematic for Israel. If you support Israel, as I do, the other thing I want to just flag, because it goes to JB Pritzker and this whole conversation, is for all the talk about the crazy parts of the Democratic base, and there are just, what crazy parts, they're not winning a lot of these primaries. The most progressive candidates are losing. And so this is an interesting dynamic when we talk about 2028. Kind of middle of the road traditional candidates are winning. And that you have to game out when you start thinking about 2028. I keep saying this, we tend to date progressives and marry moderates. I don't see that mold breaking right now.
That's interesting. Just to go back to AIPAC for a second, if you were advising them, should they just stop? Are there things that they should be doing to try to reverse the damage they've caused some of these relationships with people that are going to be in power? Or what?
I would say you need to court the middle. You need to start a conversation with these candidates who want to condition stuff, to build bridges, to have allies, to say, okay, the ones who want to be totally pro-Palestinian, who don't recognize our right to exist, we need to defeat those candidates. Okay, I get that and would second it. But where we have people like Bliss, who is Jewish, whose family was in the Holocaust, who talks about his support for Israel, but wanting to put some conditions on things, those are the people who should become your friends. And now they're now your enemies. So how, if you're Israel, the question I would ask yourself is, if Democrats are in control, what do we do? What is our game plan? I couldn't tell you that right now. Because by the way, if your game plan is, we'll just go all in with Republicans, Sean, I don't know what I'd say. 30% of the Republican Party and climbing is skeptical of you.
So that actually, the key phrase that Dan just said that I want to highlight is "and climbing," because this is the fundamental problem. I had this conversation several, 6 months ago with Prime Minister Netanyahu. These guys have to understand they have a base problem. They can keep trying to fund candidates, but the candidates are reacting to the feeling in the ground, the sediment within the grades. If I were advising them, to take your question, Rachel, I would say take at least half of that money, if not more, and start going out and having a dialogue with the American people about, like, go where people are, go on podcasts, go on social media, go to independent creators, all of that stuff. But the idea that you're just going to keep trying to buy races is missing. The tide is turning on you. Yep. You might be able to buy another midterm, another presidential, maybe one more, and that's it. Like, I'm just telling you, like, if they're smart, they got to start thinking, investing in the long term. They are losing support in both parties because they are missing. They're going straight to the grass tops and not the grassroots.
And it's 100%. It's all or nothing. There's no middle ground with them right now. And
there was, I've said this before, this is so similar to what happened with trade in the 90s and the 2000s, which is that there was an assumption you're with us. You're always going to be with us. So we'll just keep playing along. They're not watching the ground shift beneath them. And if they don't do something now, at some point, it's going to be too late for them.
Yep.
Yeah, definitely. Let's take some questions, guys. Okay. Good morning, Republican lady. Question: what will Markwayne Mullin and Tom Homan do as their first moves? What is the personal chemistry between them, or is there any yet? Will they simply lie low until after the midterms?
That's a great question, because Trump is, big on visuals, big on kind of the playing the part. I don't know what you would say you'd want your first thing to be, because Republicans have a little bit of a base problem brewing. So you got to throw the base a bone, but not offend the middle. I don't know.
So there's a couple questions in here. I think Tom Homan, from everything I understand, gets the dynamic of, like, and look, you haven't seen Tom since Minnesota, right?
Yeah.
He likes doing his interviews on Fox, whatever, but he is not like a media spotlight kind of guy. No. So he did his pressers. I think he did a great job in Minnesota. But I think he's about more of the behind the scenes and the operations. From everything I know, he's playing this beautifully with trying to help Markwayne get ready. By the way, Markwayne was at the White House yesterday as well. President gave him a little bit of a shout out, but I believe that it's the exact opposite, meaning they're not going to try to come out with a bang and da-da-da-da. They've learned the lesson that's probably between the ads and everything else, it's show by statistics. So what I would probably imagine is that instead of seeing Markwayne Mullin do a media blitz and be in commercials, they're going to overwhelm you with statistics. Get out there. Here's what we've accomplished. Here's what we're doing. Here's what we're trying to do to make sure the border's secure, the people aren't coming in. They're going to focus on the results, my guess, because Markwayne Mullin's a very smart tactician. He gets it. I don't think he wants to go out there and try to get in the spotlight like Christie did.
Yeah. It's interesting because he is a frequent, TV guest. He's good on TV. But also you don't want to shake things up too much, as you said. I am curious. One thing I am going to be watching, like, how does he handle some of these internal investigations about, the contract issue with Kristi Noem? I mean, he has a personal relationship with Kristi Noem. They used to work out in the gym together. There's like a group of like some former Dem lawmakers and Republican lawmakers who are pretty close, and both of them are in that sort of clique. So I am curious how he handles that. We'll see. Let's take another question. Okay. Question: would the United States Congress create a rule, this is a good one, that they don't get paid anytime that there's a government shutdown? They never seem to suffer. Yes, they should definitely do this. Will they? Should they? And will they? Two separate things, of course.
I would be curious too. For those who don't know, there is a hotline that members of Congress can call to Ronald Reagan Airport and Dulles to notify that they're going to be a little late, to ask that they hold planes, and to move their seats. They're allowed to hold multiple seats on an airplane. Most people cannot do this anymore, but they are. It is a perk of being a member of Congress. I am curious if those hotlines are still operating.
Well, here's so number one, it's not a rule. It's constitutional that they have to get paid. The Constitution makes that very clear. And again, so that's one.
Constitution.
Yeah. And by the way, this whole phoniness of I'm going to send my money to the Treasury, it's a joke. It's a political tool. Like they do it as a stunt, or please hold my paycheck until I get paid. they, like everyone else. But I think the bigger issue to me, Ron Johnson has a really common sense proposal that just ensures that there's never shutdowns. That
No more shutdowns. Yeah.
And that's where I think the focus should be, because that's the stupidity of this. And I think that taking that off the table, because you're playing with people's lives, you're playing with the security of America. I think you ensure that you fund it at the same levels and you go forward. But again, one of the things that, if you're not involved in some of the machinations of government running, depending on what area you're in, but I've said this before, I can't speak, with absolute authority of the Coast Guard, because it's not, the Navy and the Coast Guard. Yes, we're sister services, but we don't operate the same way and operate under different titles during peacetime. But I know in the Navy, like when you're not funded, there are a lot of constraints about the orders that you can execute, the things that you can do. So things don't happen, right? Training doesn't occur, especially on the reserve side, and Coast Guard is part of DHS. So there are a lot of things that we as citizens just never will see, but they affect a lot of people and a lot of our safety, our preparation. And it's a shame, because everyone goes, oh, well, it's not affecting anyone. It is. It's just that it might not be, front and center for a lot of us.
Let's take another question. Okay, question. If the United States attacked Russia to help Ukraine, what would the reaction be from elected officials? Would Dems and Republicans react differently than they are to the Iran attacks?
Depends. If Trump did it, yes, they'd be.
I'm not sure what I don't quite get that question.
The question is,
I want to know, like,
what Drew is asking is, the Dems are all in on, we should be helping Ukraine more. So if we went out and actually attacked Russia, would Democrats say, oh, that went too far? And I actually think it's a great question, because they would. If they only want us to give Ukraine money. They don't actually. I think if Trump said, fine, Russia. I heard you, I'm going after Russia, they'd be like, whoa, wait a second, we can't do that.
Hello, World War III.
This was the whole thing during the Biden years of, to what extent would we authorize going into Russia to hit the Russians and trying to strike the line? I mean, it is a great question. And we haven't even talked about the fact there are more stories that the Russians are aiding the Iranians. I mean,
well, to me, this is like all about, when we talk about whether it's Russia or whatever, what are you actually trying to do? If all of our goal is to keep funding Ukraine so that we can feel good, and not actually help them win the war. And this was one of the big issues with Biden, frankly, is it was like, we're going to fund him, but we're not going to give him the tools. And I'm not hitting on Biden, because at some point you go, okay, you give them the tools and they use a U.S. Tomahawk to fire it into Moscow, take out a bunch of people. Who do you think the Russians are coming after? Not Ukraine. And I think that there are some real consequences sometimes when you talk about this. This is apropos of nothing, but I had this conversation over the weekend with somebody in the energy sector. And we were talking about, feel-good policies and all this stuff. And the guy held up his iPhone. And he said, everyone loves their iPhone, don't they? And I said, sure, yeah. He goes, you want to go through where the components are built and how they're built? And he was just like, because this part is built in the, and again, I'm butchering it, but he's like, in the Congo by slave labor. And this is what happens to the environment when you build this component of it. And this is what he goes, but no one complains. I mean, we all want this feel-good crap to say, okay, we'll write the check or we'll do this. But you really don't want to know what's happening behind the curtain. And if we really wanted to go after Russia, I think everyone would say, well, we don't want to go that far. We just want to be able to feel good that we're helping Ukraine.
Well, no, the idea, I mean, just got to say it. Russia invaded Ukraine. Our belief is the Russians should not be able to take a country in Europe. There's a bad history of this. Yep. Therefore, and they are our enemy. Therefore, we have to show Putin, you cannot just go take land. I mean, that's just so people know.
Then, but pull the strings in. But then here's the $1 million question. And then what?
And so the argument would be, yeah, you can't let him win. You got to let Putin know he can't take it. But I hear you. I mean,
and so how does that work?
Right. No, I hear you.
Right. Yep. And this is the problem. And then what?
Yeah.
Let's take another question. Okay. Bixby, good morning. Question. With the rise of podcasts and alternative media, has the money spent taken on less relevance? Think Rogan and Trump.
With the rise?
Well, not everybody can get on. I mean, it's hard, but yes. I mean, I think Sean and I have talked about this, where campaigns spend money now is evolving. It used to be television and radio and direct mail. Now it is a broader thing. It used to be you courted, let's say, the New York Times op-ed page or editorial board. Now you would rather, who cares about the New York Times? You'd rather have these influencers in your corner. So yeah, it's an evolution.
For sure.
Well, I think this is, look, I had Brent Buchanan. I wrote a column about this yesterday. He was on the show from Signal Polling. This is the same thing that happened on the Republican side during the Virginia campaign in particular. People are missing where people are now. One of the things that Trump did really well is he went on the Nelk Boys, Rogan, Theo Vaughn, et cetera. He met voters where they are. And Republicans are doing a horrible job of doing that now. I believe mostly because consultants don't get a cut from when they do that, right? This is the bottom line. It's and this is the problem. The media landscape has shifted tremendously. You talk about reaching women, go on a bunch of these podcast mommy blogs, influencers that are where people are having those conversations. They're not watching CNN at 5 o'clock and making their decision because of a 30-second ad. But this is where there's a big shift going on in politics right now. And unfortunately, consultants are clinging on to where they get their money and their cuts and things like that. Virginia was a huge clarion call for Republican candidates in particular. Stop wasting your time and money on legacy outlets that don't get you anything.
All right, guys, we are at time. Sean, very quickly, what do you got coming up?
Scott Presler is going to break down not just his efforts on registration, but what he's doing to help push the SAVE Act over the finish line. So we got him tonight at 6.
Meanwhile, I have a column up in the Washington Reporter. The headline literally is "Enough with the circular firing squad on the SAVE Act." But that's a conversation for another day. We'll see what happens with that this week. Guys, we will be back tomorrow at 8:30. We'll see you then. Thanks for joining.